"Step back, old man, or you're next," the officer threatened. They had just tossed my wife. As they aimed weapons at me, I didn't yell or run. I simply looked at their commander and said 5 words that made the entire SWAT team freeze. Everyone on Maple Street knew Roy Tanner as the man who could fix anything mechanical. His garage door stood open most weekends, classic rock playing as he worked on neighbors' cars. At 73, his hands weren't as steady as during his service years, but they remembered every mechanical system they'd ever touched. Few neighbors knew about his 30 years in Special Forces, the classified missions in countries whose names never appeared in official reports. The medals kept in a wooden box in his closet rather than displayed on walls. Roy preferred it that way, judged by how he fixed carburetors, not by how he'd once led elite tactical operations that would never make history books. Only Linda, his wife of 43 years, knew everything. She'd stayed through deployments, through the nightmares, through the scars both visible and hidden. She'd helped him transition to civilian life, creating their modest ranch-style home into a peaceful haven. Roy volunteered at the Veterans Center on Thursdays, building wheelchair ramps for disabled veterans on Saturdays, and teaching auto shop at the local high school to troubled teens on Tuesdays. The kids' other teachers had given up on responded to his calm authority and infinite patience. His military background showed in subtle ways, the precise organization of his tools, his punctuality, how he unconsciously scanned rooms upon entering, the slight limp from an old combat injury, the way he startled at sudden loud noises, the deep respect he commanded without ever raising his voice. Their life had settled into comfortable routines. Roy never spoke about his classified past, and Linda never mentioned the nights he still woke up in cold sweats. They had found peace in ordinary moments: morning coffee, evening walks, Sunday crosswords, and quiet conversations on their front porch watching sunsets. The neighborhood saw only a helpful, modest retiree. No one suspected that beneath his weathered exterior lay the training and experience of one of the military's most elite operators. That Wednesday afternoon started normally. Roy was under Mrs. Peterson's ancient Buick, changing the oil, a favor for the widow whose husband had served in Vietnam. Linda had gone for groceries. Wednesday was senior discount day at Wilson's Market. The October air carried the first hint of autumn, just days before Veterans Day. The first indication something was wrong was the screech of tires. Too aggressive for their peaceful street, too purposeful. Roy rolled out from under the car just as the first black SUV blocked his driveway. 3 more followed, then the shouting began. Police, everyone on the ground now. Men in tactical gear poured from vehicles, weapons raised, faces hidden behind helmets and shields. Roy stood slowly, hands visible, engine grease still staining his fingers. "There's some mistake," he began calmly, but a rifle barrel gestured him into silence. "Down on the ground now." Roy complied. Years of training had taught him when to fight and when to wait. The concrete pressed against his cheek as boots surrounded him. Through chaos of radios and shouted commands, he heard one officer say, "Secure the house," while another zip-tied his wrist behind his back. He remained motionless, assessing. 8 officers, full tactical gear. This wasn't a routine police visit. This was a high-risk warrant operation. Roy recognized the formation, the equipment, the protocols. Something was very wrong. Subject secured. Reported the officer kneeling on Roy's back. "House clear," came another voice from inside. Roy could have dislocated his thumb and slipped the restraints. Could have executed countermeasures he'd taught to special operators for decades. Instead, he waited, gathering information, conserving energy. If they were here for him, they'd have mentioned his name, read charges. This was a mistake, a potentially deadly one. And timing couldn't have been worse. Linda would be returning any minute. That's when Linda's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, grocery bags in both arms, confusion blooming across her face. "Roy, what's happening?" 3 officers immediately pivoted, weapons trained on her 70-year-old frame. "Drop the bags. Hand where we can see them." Linda froze. Paper bags clutched her chest, eyes widening behind her reading glasses. She looked so small, surrounded by armored men with raised weapons. Please, She's not complying. A younger officer's voice cracked with adrenaline. Ma'am, final warning. Linda began lowering the bags, but her arthritic hands couldn't move fast enough. Roy saw panic in the young officer's stance. The slightly raised shoulders, the white-knuckle grip on his weapon, the overly wide stance. All warning signs Roy recognized from decades of training operators. Non-compliant subject. The young officer stepped forward, drawing his taser. Roy's voice cut through the chaos. She's my wife. She's just carrying groceries. A boot pressed harder against his back. Step back, old man, or you're next. The taser fired. Linda's body convulsed as electricity coursed through her. Grocery bags exploded across the driveway. Eggs shattering. Apples rolling beneath tactical boots. Milk splashing across concrete. She collapsed like a marionette with cut strings. Roy didn't panic. The same disciplined calm that kept him alive through 3 decades of operations took over. His breath steadied. His mind cleared. Every muscle tensed not in preparation to fight, but in perfect control. He focused on the officer with command insignia. "Let me up," he said with quiet authority that cut through the tactical chaos. The commander hesitated, something in Roy's tone registering. Then he nodded, and Roy rose to his feet, still zip-tied, but now standing tall despite his age. Roy looked directly into the commander's eyes and spoke 5 words that changed everything. "Call Brigadier Hawkins right now." The SWAT commander blinked, momentary confusion crossing his face. Around them, the tactical team maintained their positions, weapons still trained, radios still crackling with tactical chatter. One of the younger officers scoffed. "That's supposed to scare us, old man? We're executing a warrant for Marcus Delgado, high-level weapons trafficking." Roy's expression didn't change. His eyes remained fixed on the commander. "This is 1473 Maple Street. You want 1473 Maple Avenue. Different zip code entirely." His voice remained steady despite Linda, still lying motionless on the concrete. "Now cut these restraints and call Brigadier James Hawkins at Central Command." "Sir, I need to attend to my wife," Roy added. "She has a heart condition." The commander hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his professional facade. "Check the address." He ordered one of his team. While they verified, Roy spoke again. "Left inside pocket of my jacket. Look but don't touch." The commander cautiously approached and, reaching into Roy's jacket pocket with gloved hands, he withdrew a worn metallic identification card with distinctive eagle emblem, unmistakable to anyone with military background. "Force Recon Commander authorization," Roy said quietly. The yard went still. Even the radios seemed quiet. One of the tactical team members, older than the others, whispered something to the commander. "Sir, that's not just military. That's Special Operations Command level clearance. That's..." The commander's demeanor shifted immediately. "Get the medic over here now," he barked. "Cut his restraints." As Roy knelt beside Linda, checking her pulse with practiced fingers, the operation crumbled around him. One officer frantically worked his phone, presumably verifying Roy's identity. Another radio dispatched to confirm the address discrepancy. "You hit the wrong house," Roy stated flatly, helping Linda to a sitting position as the medic arrived. "You didn't verify. You escalated without cause. And you used excessive force on a senior citizen carrying groceries." Across the street, a neighbor filmed the entire scene from his porch. Later, he would tell reporters, "He just said 5 words, and the SWAT team lowered their rifles like someone flipped a switch." The commander approached, his helmet now removed, revealing a face blanched with realization. "Sir, we had intelligence that..." "You had nothing," Roy interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying an edge that made the officer step back. "What you had was adrenaline and authority without accountability." Linda's eyes fluttered open, confusion and pain evident. "I'm here," he assured her, then looked back at the commander. "I'm taking my wife inside now. Your team will remain outside. You will call Brigadier Hawkins immediately." The young officer who had fired the taser stood frozen, the weight of his mistake visibly crushing him. As Roy helped Linda to her feet, another team member quietly collected the scattered groceries, a futile gesture of apology. As they walked slowly toward their front door, the whispers among the tactical team told Roy everything. Database searches had confirmed his identity. His name had appeared on lists they weren't supposed to know existed. Lists that made even hardened SWAT officers nervous. They had come expecting to find a weapons dealer. Instead, they had tossed the wife of a living legend in special operations. Inside, Roy carefully settled Linda on the sofa, bringing her water and a blanket. Through the window, he could see the SWAT team's posture had completely changed. No longer aggressive predators, but chastened professionals awaiting judgment. "Roy," Linda whispered, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the spots where the taser barbs had struck. "What did you say to make them stop?" Roy checked her pulse again before answering. "I reminded them that respect comes before assumptions." He didn't elaborate further. Some things were still classified, even after all these years. 40 minutes later, an unmarked black SUV with government plates pulled up. It arrived without sirens or flashers, just a deliberate stop behind the police vehicles. The man who emerged wore no uniform, just a tailored gray suit that suggested authority, without needing insignia. Brigadier General James Hawkins stood a moment, surveying the scene with the practiced eye of someone who had assessed far more dangerous situations in his 67 years. He moved with purpose toward the house without acknowledging the SWAT commander who hurried to intercept him. Roy met him at the door. The two men stood silently for a moment, decades of shared history speaking in the silence between them. Then, with precise formality, General Hawkins raised his hand in a crisp salute. Roy returned it, his first salute in 17 years. "They said you were in witness protection," Hawkins said finally. "Only officially," Roy answered. Hawkins' gaze moved past him to Linda, on the sofa. His jaw tightened visibly. When he turned to face the assembled tactical team, the general's voice carried across the front yard, without needing to shout. Authority radiated from him like heat. "This man," he began, gesturing toward Roy, "wrote the protocols you just violated." The officers stood motionless. One of them, the older team member who had recognized the significance of Roy's identification, suddenly paled in recognition. "Tanner," he whispered. "R.J. Tanner. You wrote the Civilian Engagement Handbook, the one we studied in advanced training." Roy nodded once, acknowledgement without pride. Hawkins addressed the SWAT commander directly now. "You didn't attain a suspect today. You assaulted a national asset, a man whose operational experience likely exceeds your entire team combined." The commander started to speak, but Hawkins cut him off. "The officer who deployed a taser without proper threat assessment. Where is he?" The young officer stepped forward, trembling visibly. "Your equipment. Now!" Without protest, the young man removed his tactical vest, sidearm, and badge, placing them on the hood of the nearest vehicle. "You're relieved. Report to your captain for administrative reassignment." No one spoke as the officer walked to a patrol car and sat inside, head bowed in the realization that his career had just imploded. Hawkins turned back to Roy, reaching inside his suit jacket. He withdrew a sealed envelope and extended it. "This contains two things," the general explained quietly. "A formal apology from the Department of Defense and reinstatement of your clearances. We need you back, Roy. The situation in Kazakhstan is deteriorating. You know the region better than anyone." Roy looked at the envelope, but made no move to take it. "The world never changes, James," he replied. "Just the uniforms and the weapons." He glanced back at Linda, who watched from the doorway now. "My service is to her now, and to the veterans who need support, not tactical solutions." Hawkins nodded, understanding in his eyes. He placed the envelope on the porch railing. "The offer stands," he said simply, then turned to leave. Roy never opened the envelope. Some offers didn't need consideration to be answered. A week later, Police Chief Robert Garrison called a press conference. Standing behind a podium flanked by American flags, he announced what the department was calling the 5 Words Protocol, a new mandatory training program emphasizing de-escalation, proper identification procedures, and respecting the dignity of civilians during all interactions. He never mentioned Roy or Linda by name. Didn't have to. The video had gone viral despite attempts to suppress it, and the community knew exactly what had prompted this sudden commitment to reform. Sometimes 5 words can be louder than fear. Sometimes a strong disposition isn't standing over someone else. It's standing your ground. If you believe real heroes don't need to yell to be heard, share this story. Comment respect if you stand for those who served. Subscribe for more stories about quiet courage speaking louder than power.